In July, youth from across our state embarked on a 10-day bus journey, Freedom Ride 2010.
Freedom Ride began as an initiative of 3 Episcopal dioceses of the state of North Carolina in an attempt to both educate and empower our young people as they confront some of the racial inequalities in our state as well as in the Episcopal Church.
The Freedom Ride confronted some difficult North Carolina racial history. History often omitted or badly skewed in school textbooks. The horrors of slave life depicted at Stagville and Somerset were especially vivid for African Americans in the group. In Wilmington, Freedom Riders learned of the 1898 insurrection that ushered into our state almost a century of Jim Crow injustice and Ku Klux Klan violence. In Oxford, they saw a play based on Tim Tyson's account of the 1970 murder of black Vietnam veteran Henry Marrow and ensuing riots. The Freedom Riders also discovered at Fort Fisher that learning about history has its moments of humor.
2 days worth of prepping. Well, I say prepping, but to help you all understand. They're raining down Skittles on this fort for 2 days. Skittles. But they weigh about 500 pounds.
Big Skittles.
Those are some heavy Skittles. There ain't an Excedrin out there that you can take to relieve that headache.
The Freedom Riders learned that history also contains acts of incredible courage. There was enslaved Harriet Jacobs, who spent 6 years hiding in an attic crawl space rather than succumb to the sexual advances of the man who claimed to own her. There were the 4 Greensboro A&T students, who in 1960 led the protest at Woolworths against lunchroom segregation. And there were those such as Wade Chestnut, who spoke to us about his own involvement in expanding that protest to Howard Johnson's. And Oxford's Vicky Hammy, who spoke of taking part as a child, despite Ku Klux Klan intimidation, in the march to Raleigh to protest the apparent whitewashing of the Henry Marrow murder. The Freedom Riders learned from all this their own need to be courageous.
Especially in the black community, we make white jokes. I mean, oh yeah, white people can't dance, and they did that because they're white and stuff. And I never thought of it as anything because, you know, that's what was normal to me and everybody does it. But then I realized, you know, that's the same as, you know, what if a white person was making a black joke? You know, of course I would be upset, but I can't expect them to take my jokes and not be offended but not allow them to do the same thing.
While North Carolina has made significant progress in racial justice, much remains to be done. Freedom Riders were deeply gratified to see Episcopalians playing prominent roles in these efforts, from Bishop Delaney as the first African-American suffragan bishop to Bishop Marble's ongoing work with Truth and Reconciliation in Greensboro, related to racially motivated killings in 1979. But much hard work remains before Oxford and Greensboro and many, many other North Carolina communities will have healthy race relations. And much hard work remains before we learn how to live in a healthy, just relationship with the Latino population that does so much of the heavy lifting in our state. The Freedom Riders learned that a mere snack after gleaning was equivalent to 2 hours' wages for the migrant farm workers 1 field away. Citing abolitionist Harriet Tubman, Bishop Curry exhorted the Freedom Riders never to give up in the face of daunting obstacles.
That, my friends, is the job that we have to do, to take the world as it is and to reorder it from the nightmare it often is into the dream that God intends. That's what we need you to do, to go forth from this place, to keep going, to create a world of love, create a world of justice, create a world where we are not ashamed to be brothers and sisters one of another. Go, so you keep going. If you hear dogs, keep going.
Working on big challenges, Freedom Riders discovered, can generate a busload of pretty tight friends.
Spill! Right now! Where?
The goat.
I'm not even bad doing
Driving in a
Neighborhood.
automobile.
And if some of these friends are black and some are white and some are in between, you're going to get some funky new ideas about a lot of things, including hairstyling. And in a 2-day closing retreat, you're going to generate some powerful ideas about debunking stereotypes of all kinds. And you're going to see some impressive creativity.
As we as a community come together to nurture our young people to live in the example of Jesus Christ, we too must recognize the need for reconciliation and transformation. Confront our own fears while embracing the diversity within the church. In doing so, our lives will be enriched as we experience the presence of God within others.
David Crabtree and Raleigh's WRAL TV News captured well the impact Freedom Ride 2010 was making on its youth participants.
Friends, can I get an amen? Amen!
45 young people, strangers until this trip, curious about their heritage, curious about each other.
Yes.
This pilgrimage began last Friday in Wilmington, from there to Fort Fisher, then the historic Somerset Plantation near Edenton. Still in eastern North Carolina, Tarboro, then on to Raleigh. Oxford and its history of race riots less than 40 years ago was next. Today, Durham and Chapel Hill. The 500-mile journey will end in Greensboro, home of the sit-ins that propelled a nationwide movement.
This is the only mural that's downtown. We call this Pauli Murray True Community.
Today they touched history as history touched them with the life of Durham's Pauli Murray, the first African-American woman ordained priest in the Episcopal Church. Some told me this odyssey has stretched their thinking in ways they weren't expecting.
Anywhere from the school system to the, even a lot of times in the church itself, there's a lot of bigotry, and it may not be racism, it may be classism or, the gay, straight, bisexual issue, and it's everywhere, and that's something that we, as a community and as a church especially, need to work on.
Along the ride, some surprises. For example, when this young lady met Oxford author, school board protester, and Duke researcher Tim Tyson.
At first, to be truthful, I really thought he was black, but he turned out to be white, and so that was a big shocker to me, and I was like, whoa.
The expedition ends this weekend. Their journey may last a lifetime.
As an African American, you always are representing your race because we always sort of pop up in that negative light and we're not expected to do as much, so you always got to excel at what you do.
We are the change, and this is where we start. This trip is where we started.
And I'm not sure if we can change everything, but we'll certainly give it our best shot.